Luck? Okay, but we will do it, rather than spend another 10 minutes setting up, we'll do it after the break. Yeah. 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 Please lie on your back. And begin to listen to how you're lying on the floor this morning. In particular, notice the length of your spine. Can you trace along the length of your spine from your coccyx to where it connects into the base of your skull with your head? You could imagine that somebody was using 2 fingers, one on either of the spine, and tracing up, moving upwards, a vertebra at a time. Notice if that helps you direct your attention. Notice how smoothly and how sequentially your attention travels. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you notice it jumps places. And if you notice it jumps, can you bring your attention back and notice, is there something different about how you sense or see those vertebrae to another area compared to somewhere else? In particular, notice the relationship of your lower back to the floor, your neck, the vertebra of your neck, and where you can sense more clearly that places vertebrae are in contact with the floor and where they are more lifted away from the floor. Now bend your knees up and stand your feet. How did you do that? Do you know what you did? So you could just say, oh, I bent my knees up and stood my feet. But how? What pathway did your knees take through space and your legs? Did your feet stay in contact with the floor or did they leave the floor? Do you step one and then the other? Do you halfway bring one towards being bent and then begin the other? So do it several times to notice what you do and how you breathe as you do that. Can you also notice the way you're doing it? Does the area of contact of your pelvis change or its pressure change in some way? You're zoned out. You're exploring how you bring your legs to stand, so the soles of your feet on the floor. And there's many different ways. So another way is to bring both knees, bend both legs to one side and come up sideways. And if you do that, is it easier to do it to the right or to the left? Leave your legs long for a moment. And again, notice the contact of your pelvis and the relationship in particular of your lumbar spine with the floor. And then bend your knees and stand your feet. And notice, can you sense a difference? Can you distinguish whether your pelvis has a larger area of contact when your knees are bent? And is it the same location on the back of your pelvis and buttocks, or does the contact move to higher in the direction of your waist, the upper part of your pelvis? So the next time your legs are bent and your feet are standing, leave them there and interlace your fingers behind your head and lift your head with the help of your arms, paying attention to how your lower back, your lumbar, the arch of your lumbar spine is influenced by the lifting of your head, or not. And what relationship do you have your arms in? Are your arms, elbows pointing out to the sides, or are they directed more towards the ceiling? Can you make the movement so small that you might notice if there's a difference between those two ways of lifting your head? One with your elbows wide and one with your elbows closer together. So keep your elbows closer together, because when they are, you're bringing the weight of your arms more closer to your center, so the effect or the mobilization of your abdominal muscles is likely to be more effective. Not necessarily if you know how to use your abdominals in many different ways, but for most people it makes quite a difference. So keep your elbows pointed towards the ceiling and your forearms connected to your face, and lift your head a little bit away from the floor, noticing, can you sense your abdominal muscles mobilizing to help lift your head? And how would you notice that? It could feel like a tightening. You might notice your pubic bone is drawn headward, because the lower attachment of the abdominal muscles is to the pubic bone and around the lower rim of your pelvis. But then, as we mentioned last week, they attach all the way up around the middle ribs. So can you feel the influence of your abdominal musculature trying to slide or draw your middle lower ribs downwards in the direction of the floor or your pelvis as you lift your head? Mm-hmm. See if you can invite it in. So notice that first, that it doesn't happen spontaneously, because sometimes if the abdominal muscles are already contracted in a particular way or an habitual way, then they're not free to mobilize differently. So you can invite that idea. You've got some relationships, some directions of movement of the parts of yourself through the torso, and you can see, can you invite that in gently? Okay, put your head down and rest a moment. And leave your arms by your sides, bend your knees and stand your feet. Notice where the relationship, the distance between your feet, the distance between your heels and your big toes, where your heels are relative to your pelvis, where your feet are relative to your pelvis, and where your knees are relative to your hips and your ankles. So some people have their knees a little inwards, relative, if you passed a plane through the hip, a vertical plane through the hip joint, the knee, and the ankle. The plane, the knee would be, the hip and the foot might be in that plane, but the knee is either closer to the midline of yourself or further outside that plane. With your knees towards the ceiling like this and your feet standing, very slowly begin to open your left knee sideways and bring it back. And notice where you sense that movement happening. So we're doing the left leg, but if you have difficulty with your left, then you can do the right. But just stay with the leg that you're exploring with. Don't keep switching. So each time you open your knee sideways, gradually open it a little more. And listen to whether you can sense the changing distance between your left knee and your right knee, and your left knee and the floor which your knee is moving towards. Can you feel how the contact of your left foot changes with the floor? You may feel the weight shifting more onto the outside edge of your foot. The inside edge beginning to lift. And what's happening with the contact of your pelvis and the floor? Can you feel any changes elsewhere through yourself as the weight of your leg moves sideways, your hip joint is opening, knee comes close to the floor, and when you feel like it's moved as comfortably as far as it can in the direction, gradually begin to lengthen your leg so that your foot will slide on its outside edge downwards and then pull it back again. So your foot turns out. You don't have to lengthen it completely. You can just lengthen it a little bit and then begin to draw it back upwards again so your knee bends more. Your knee moves headward. And when you come to the place where it becomes more uncomfortable to keep bending your hip and your knee headward out to the side, let your knee lift away from the floor and bring your knee towards the ceiling so that you stand on your left foot again. And do that many times, opening your knee slowly, very slowly to the side. Can you listen to the trajectory, the pathway of your knee in space, while sensing the unbending of your knee and the lengthening of your leg? I haven't added that constriction. So if you're moving the left leg, yeah, we're going there. So you can just notice what happens with the right side of your pelvis, which means that something's happening with the left side. Can you feel that as your left leg opens to the side, your knee opens to the side? So it's not straightening your foot to the side. Your leg is moving footward, as if you were lying with your legs long. That's the direction. And as your knee opens to the side, you may sense that your pelvis changes its contact with the floor. That the weight of the leg draws the pelvis, your pelvis leftward, and the right side lightens on the floor a little bit. And how do you sense the movement, the speed of your movement? Is it the same speed throughout? From being a standing leg with the knee to the ceiling and being a long leg, is the speed uniform? And then what about in the coming back? Do you notice places where there's little speed humps? So listen to what's happening in your hip joint, in your lower back, along the length of the left side of your torso, the left side of you, and the right side. While you open your knee like this and lengthen your leg, does your contact with the floor change? Next time your left leg is long, leave it long and lengthen your right leg. And notice the differences or how you experience your left leg, your right leg. If you feel any difference between your left side and your right side, in your pelvis, in your lower back, both legs are long. What about the way your shoulder blades are lying? So sometimes when our attention gets caught or hooked somewhere, it's easy not to notice what's happening elsewhere. Please bend your knees again and stand your feet. And this time explore opening your right knee to the side and bringing it back. What size or range of movement did you choose to move in to begin with? So opening your knee to the side, there's quite a large range with most people. So did you begin small and gradually enlarge it, or did you go, what directed you to go, if anything, to go as where you did? So gradually make that movement a little larger and a little larger until you begin to find yourself coming to the place where your leg, unless you make a large movement with the rest of yourself, that's as far as it opens comfortably, and then begin to lengthen your leg a little bit and come back. And then lengthen a little more. And what pathway does your foot follow or take as your leg lengthens? Does it follow a line that's parallel to a midline through your torso and extended between your legs? Or does it go rightward, further to the right as it lengthens? So lengthen now your right leg, but keep your left leg standing, sole of your foot on the floor. And begin to explore turning, as we were at the end of the day yesterday, turning your right leg a little outward, so you roll over the heel. You feel that moment where to turn your foot outward anymore, your knee begins to bend. And then in small increments, begin to draw your leg, draw your foot headward, let your knee bend, but don't go all the way. Just begin it and then lengthen it again. Notice what speed you're choosing to go at. So the leg that you're not moving is standing. The knee is bent, the sole of the foot is in contact with the floor. So just go to the place where you first begin to feel a little bit of effort or a little bit of strain. Stop at that place and lengthen your leg again. Now, whatever speed you're going at, could you go a quarter of that speed? Do 5 movements that take 4 times as long. My maths ain't great. 4 times as long to go only as far as you were previously when you felt that first increase of effort. Then lengthen your leg again. And begin to expand your attention. Left knee stays vertical. You're only doing a part of the movement at a fraction of the speed. Listening to whether the speed is uniform, it stays constant in the part of the pathway that you're exploring. So it takes 4 times as long to bend the leg a little bit and 4 times as long to lengthen your leg. And the next time you lengthen your leg, open your left knee to the side and lengthen your left leg also, and pause a moment. Listen to what you sense in your right leg, your left leg, and through yourself. And think about this movement for a moment. What do you use to draw your leg up like this? In which places through yourself did you feel were involved with this pulling movement of your leg? Please bend both knees. Stand your feet. Again, open your right leg to the side. Keep your left leg standing. And lengthen your right leg. And then as you begin to draw it back up again, just go to the place. So you lengthen your leg and then you're coming back, but only go to the place where it would be, you have to strain to draw it up any further with your knee hanging out to the side. And it would be more comfortable to bring your knee to standing. And then lengthen your leg again. Lengthen the right leg. Open the knee to the side. Letting it lengthen or straighten with incredible slowness. And then drawing it back up and really finding that moment where the effort begins to increase. And noticing whether your left leg is involved in any way, your left hip joint, when you lengthen your leg, right leg, or when you bring it to standing. Can you listen so that, and do the movement, this movement, in a way that the pressure on the sole of your left foot doesn't change? The next time, and then so the next time you come up to this place, bring your right knee towards the ceiling. So lift your leg, bring it upwards so that the weight comes back on the sole of your foot and the knee's pointing towards the ceiling. And when you open your right leg and lengthen it the next time, listen to whether it's possible to extend your leg long without making any change in the way your lower back, the arch of your lower back is. So how could you guide your leg in order for the arch, the lumbar spine vertebra, not to lift away from the floor? You may feel the weight shift a little bit on your pelvis, but instead of arching, maybe the lumbar vertebra could even come a little closer to the floor. So they're not lifting. And listen to what happens through the rest of yourself. Your breathing, the contact of your shoulders with the floor, your head with the floor. When you bring your knee to vertical, do you slide your foot? Does your foot arrive in a place where you want to shift it either to the right or to the left in order for it to be comfortable? And does that have anything to do with the pathway that your foot is traveling on towards your buttock, towards yourself, as you draw your knee sideways, as you bend your leg? Next time your right knee is towards the ceiling and your foot is standing, keep it there. So both legs are standing. And now explore that with your left leg. So find out, is it possible for your left leg to open to the side, your knees moving towards the floor, your hip joint is opening, the weight shifts over the sole of your foot towards the outside edge, and to the place where your knee doesn't open further sideways, and it's easier to lengthen your leg, to extend your leg. Finding out if it's possible, yes. But sometimes the instructions, you need to listen to your organization. So for some people, their lower back, they may have a use of their abdominal muscles and an organization where their back is really flat already. It's held backwards. And for some people, it's the opposite. So you need to sense what you are doing and what your current organization is, and to see how you can move with the instructions, directions as a guide to what and reference to what you're doing with yourself. Depends what you normally do. So we need to be careful when we say we. What? Not necessarily. That's a little black and white. You know, so that's the two ends of the spectrum that we can do. What we are looking for is how quiet can your lumbar spine be while you do this movement of the legs. So often we have habits through the length of our spine, our breathing, our chest, our neck, which interferes with the ability to freely use our legs, because our hip joints are used to working harder to compensate for perhaps what our spine isn't doing. So the intention is to explore, is it possible to keep your lower back quiet? So without increasing the arch, but for some people, if the arch is relatively high, then it may be that they feel a flattening of their arch. They may actually need to mobilize something or change something in your ribs, in your chest, in your way of breathing for that to happen, to actually use more the muscles of the legs to do this movement without them moving against a fixed organization through the torso. When the leg opens, so when you begin with one leg, both legs standing, so your other leg is standing, then when you open your leg to your side, your foot, yes, you're rolling over the sole of your foot. So the weight goes to the outside edge. So you can notice how able is your foot to receive the weight of your leg. Does it feel secure? People have had an injury to their ankle or their knee. It may not feel secure. Side bend. Okay, let's have a look at the skeleton. So maybe roll yourself, actually just lengthen your legs for a moment, have a rest, sense what you sense in your contact with the floor. And then roll yourself up to sitting. And let's have a look. Oh, yep, that's okay. I was going to go that side, but okay. So we're starting with the legs bent. Well, let's begin even further. Most of us will have some sort of space under the lower back. That's because of the strength of our back muscles, sometimes, our habits. When we have the legs standing like this, we're looking at the movement of the knee opening out to the side, which is a movement primarily in the hip joint, in the foot floor joint, and it can be through the bones of the foot and the ankle. But as soon as the weight of the leg opens to the side, there is a tendency, because of the coupling, it pulls the pelvis a little bit in the direction of the leg. And you can see really nicely on him, on Bono, how the weight of the leg, if I can get it there, turns the pelvis, starts to roll the pelvis a tiny little bit. As soon as the pelvis starts to move, it's moving the lumbar spine. The lumbar vertebra can't rotate very much. There's almost, hold on a second, no movement. Sorry, Helen, just let me finish my thought. Almost no movement of the lumbar vertebra to turn. So several things can happen. One is that the back arches, because it can do that well, you know, lift away, so that this happens. There's an increase in the space underneath the back. Something else that can happen is that instead of arching, if we can maintain if we have a relatively normal tonus in our abdominal muscles and our back muscles, then the movement goes higher and it starts to create a very small turning through the thoracic spine into the thorax. So you can even feel it changing pressure on your shoulder blades. It is subtle. Okay, Helen? Turning, yeah.
And so I'm shortening on the side of the knee. So I'm sort of supporting the pelvis by shortening on that side.
Okay, is that necessary? Yeah. Let's have a look at you. Okay, it's the easiest. So that's a great place to start, to know it's easiest. Easiest may be habitual. So it's more familiar, it's more comfortable. Do you want to have a show us? We may bring him back, so we'll just leave him there. Okay. So keep your knees, both knees bent. Start with both knees bent. And open your knee to the side. Yeah. So, so let's come back up. So one thing that's happening is that this leg is being brought over too. So if we can differentiate the hip joint, this leg can stay standing. But often it goes where, if our attention is really focused here, this goes out of our awareness and we don't notice that this is happening, which is extra work because the muscles are keeping the pelvis and the leg connected to one another. So let's open your knee to the side. So that's a movement of the hip joint, the ankle a little bit, and in the foot. Now, how about there? You just start to slide it down. So then you don't need to use that. Yeah, okay, great. And what did you find? Sorry. Until now, Helen didn't feel she had the control over her leg to not do that. So let's go back and do it. Let's go back and do what you were doing. Can you show us? So hips opening out. So can you exaggerate?
Starting to shorten.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't, then I
would arch. Okay, so it's a strategy for reducing. So that's great. You had a strategy. Was one option. Anyone else find they were doing something else? Yeah. So you feel a change in pressure on the back of your head. Yeah? Okay, just see. All right. So there comes a certain point where if you want to keep taking your knee in that direction, you actually will probably be straining in your adductor muscles. So then there's what direction what pathway does the foot take? Can you lengthen your leg? And can you look for the easiest ways? So often we have a unconscious notion of how our legs lie when we're lying, how they should lie, that we don't even know that we have. But yesterday we were looking at this channel, this line. Yeah, so maybe for now this would be the easier place to bring your knee to standing. And open the knee again. Where'd the box go? Sorry.
At the beginning of a movement, I can't hold my leg. I can't relax my legs with my feet outing that far out from my pelvis.
Okay, when they're standing. You mean this distance
When
from
they're
you? You need
standing,
to bring them really close.
Yes.
Yeah. So our muscular tissues respond to how we've used ourselves. So it can be that there's kind of seemingly discrepancies, but that's what we're exploring. So this position was where it was easier for her to bring her foot to stand, but then what Helen's saying is it's easier for her to open her hip.
Less effort on the front muscles.
Yeah.
Have my feet.
Less effort on the front muscles. Okay. Any other questions about this?
So in that situation for Helen, like you maybe just try dropping your leg out less when you're going down.
Yeah.
So just, around, you can sort of see where it grabs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can feel it, but
Mm-hmm. And then straighten your
try
leg.
from there.
So what we're doing is looking at different pathways.
If you play around with them,
Okay. And then it'd be when you do it that way. Yeah. So what I'm going to suggest is that you get together with a partner and
So the point, this particular thing. So the intention of this is that it's about differentiation, not integration.
Differentiation perhaps first.
First, okay.
Because then you can integrate.
Yes,
that
I'm
way
not
of
suggesting that.
Yeah. So these are really small movements. Can be difficult to make distinctions. Sorry about my back. About them. So what I'm going to suggest is you get with a partner. Choose the easier leg. The person that's going to move is going to choose the easier leg. Sorry. And then you bring your leg to standing. You're going to put your hands in different places and see, what do you sense? Actually, I'm going to use the pelvis first. Okay. So, yes. When she tries to stop her back arching, she feels it in her neck because your lower back are connected to the vertebral column. So what about if I put my hands here as she does it? Any way you like. Yep. So I'm just listening, okay? Just listening. Where else could I put my hands to track the movement? Yep. Yep. And where else? Ribs. Yep. Lower ribs, upper ribs, underneath her head, her leg. Okay? All those places. So with a partner, could you just spend 3 or 4 minutes putting your hands and tracing the movement, listening for is there any movement happening? Sorry. Just saw an old friend. Listening to whether you feel any movement that's connected to what they're doing in those places.